What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Widowmaker guide. I'm bringing you guys 3 critical tips against each of the support heroes that we have right now in Overwatch. Keep in mind, Symmetra's are going to be moving over to defense in the future. So if you want to keep up with the new Symmetra and new critical tips against Symmetra, of course, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I've already done 3 critical tips for tanks, offense heroes, and defense hero. That is, of course, going to be linked in the Widowmaker guides playlist in the description as well. Okay, let's get started with my first general tip. This applies to every single support, okay? You're going to be a really great Widowmaker. You're going to be helping out your team a lot with Widowmaker if you're able to punish bad positioning from the enemy support. There's a lot of DPS Moiras out there, a lot of DPS Lucios. Sometimes the enemy team even has a DPS Mercy or a DPS Ana. You want to make sure that you have great positioning with Widowmaker and that you're punishing these bad plays from the enemy support, okay? If you're punishing bad positioning, you're going to be able to help out your team in an outstanding way. Anyways, let's get started with the 3 critical tips. Now, if you want to know what a critical tip is, who this video is catered to, all that stuff, all of those frequently asked questions are answered in the description below. Let's get started with Ana. Okay, my first critical tip for Ana. A lot of Ana players are usually in the back line. They're not very mobile and they're just scoping in, thinking that they're safe, just healing their teammates. You want to make sure that you punish this type of behavior by always taking the high ground, having some on-point positioning, and taking out the enemy Ana, since they're most likely going to be an easy target. So even at higher ranks, you guys have to keep in mind that for the most part, the enemy Ana player, they're most likely going to be in the back line, which means that you should be trying to go for those grapple shots to take out the enemy Ana, or of course, if you have a really good position, make sure that you take it so that you eliminate the enemy Ana player. That's the thing about, Widowmaker versus support combat, that for the most part, as a Widowmaker, you mostly have a general idea of where the supports are, if of course you're good at keeping in mind where your opponents might be and tracking ult charge and all that stuff. Listen, talking about tracking ult charge, if you think the enemy Ana has nano boost and you have a chance to take her out before she comes back to the enemy team, that is a big deal, because not only is the enemy team not going to have any heals, but they're also not going to have a nano boost. So that is of course one fundamental that you guys want to keep in mind when it comes down to Widowmaker versus Ana combat. Punish them when they're in the back line and not very mobile. Make sure that you're always aware of the enemy Ana and when you can take her out. And of course, make sure that if they have their ultimate and you have an opportunity to take them out and you're going to end up being safe, make sure that you take them out before she heads back into the team. The second critical tip when it comes down to Ana players, a lot of Ana players tend to shoot and then they throw a sleep dart at you. Make sure that after you take your shot, if you don't land the final blow, if you don't land the critical blow, okay, make sure that you jump either towards the left or the right, because most Ana players, like I said, they usually tend to shoot and then they just tend to sleep dart. Alright, basically, if you're doing an Ana, you want to be a little bit mobile, because of course you don't want her to sleep dart you. And of course, that leads me forward to my third critical tip against Ana. Listen, guys, stop challenging Ana players. Like, if you think you're going to lose the fight against the Ana player, you need to get out of there. If you get hit twice by an Ana player, that's my third fundamental, my third critical tip against Widowmaker versus Ana combat. If you get damaged by the Ana player 2 times in a row, you need to get out of there. You either need to get out or get better positioning. You need to retreat and wait for, until you have an opening to take out the Ana player, or you need to change positioning and take out the Ana from that new position. All the Ana player has to do is just hit you 2 times, and then she might throw a nade at you and you might be finished off because maybe you were a little bit weaker without the duel. The reason why I'm stressing out this third fundamental a lot is because far too many times I make the mistake of trying to challenge the Ana to a sniper duel and I just get taken out. If she hits you twice, run away. Okay, better to be safe than sorry. And for the most part, remember, Widowmaker is a character that if you aren't in the team fight where your team needs you the most, you're basically going to be throwing, okay? So you want to make sure that you're not throwing. Again, dude, if you get hit twice by the Ana player, don't get too cocky. Just run, get healed, get a new positioning. I know I stressed it too much, but it is a fundamental. It's something that some Widowmaker players might not be applying, and that is what's holding them back on Widowmaker versus Ana combat. We move on forward to Brigitte. There's a part of the Overwatch community that says that Brigitte makes Widowmaker useless, but of course I completely disagree, because the players that say that Brigitte makes Widowmaker useless have probably terrible positioning with Widowmaker. The first critical tip, the first fundamental of Widowmaker versus Brigitte combat, make sure that your positioning is on point. You want to be on the high ground. You want to be in a position where you're going to be able to, of course, shoot the enemy players, shoot the enemy Brigitte, and of course, you're also safe from the Brigitte assaulting you, okay? If your positioning is on point with Widowmaker, you're going to be able to help out your team a lot when it comes down to dealing with the enemy Brigitte. Of course, that moves me forward to my second critical tip against Brigitte. The reason why you're going to be able to help out your team a lot if you have good positioning against the enemy Brigitte is because you're going to have a really good line of sight on the enemy Brigitte when she's brawling with, of course, the people in your team. My second critical tip with Widow versus Brigitte combat. Make sure that you take her out when she's distracted, just swinging her dick swinging weapon, or when she's just shield bashing people, when she's just flail shotting people. Make sure that you use those opportunities to take her out. The third critical tip, third fundamental of Widowmaker versus Brigitte combat. Okay, a lot of Brigittes, right, when you're really far away from them or when you're within medium range, they basically walk forward a little bit with the shield and then they throw the flail shot ability. No. Bad Brigitte. You see, guys, when Brigitte throws her flail shot ability, she's completely vulnerable. She literally can't do anything. She can't even bring up her damn shield. So as soon as she throws that flail shot ability, make sure that as she has her shield up, before she's about to throw her flail shot ability, that you're tracking her head. Like that, when she throws the flail shot ability, you can take her out with an easy headshot. Hashtag easy clap. Alright, now we move on forward to Lucio. You guys want to make sure that as he's wall riding, as he's moving all over the place, you guys want to make sure that you take your time to track him and then of course you take him out. Sometimes Lucios are going to wall ride from one point to the next, which means that you're going to be able to predict where they're going to end up, and that's of course the opportunity when you can take your shot. Because the reason why, you know, this is like my first fundamental on Widowmaker versus Lucio combat is because sometimes as Widowmaker players we panic and we just shoot the Lucio over and over and over again instead of taking the time to of course track him and of course land a shot that's going to matter. Of course, you should only be taking your time when it comes down to taking out the enemy Lucios if you are in a safe position or if there aren't any threats around you. Obviously, if there's a couple of threats around you, you don't want to take 85 years tracking the Lucio as he's wall riding. Of course, that moves me forward to my second critical tip when it comes down to the enemy Lucio. Lucio is pretty much useless when he's floating in the air after he jumps after a wall ride. So you want to make sure that after he jumps after a wall ride, that of course you take him out. And listen, guys, taking out a Lucio isn't easy sometimes. All right, there's a lot of Lucios out there that are very, very hard. But again, this is also another tip that just basically makes it easier. And I've been playing Fortnite for like the past 10 days, so you know, in these examples, I'm kind of missing some of my shots, but I hope you guys understand the general point of what I'm trying to tell you guys. Okay, my third critical tip when it comes down to Widow v Lucio, make sure that you take out the Lucio as he is ulting. Okay, so remember, Lucio's gonna jump in the air and then he's going to hit his weapon on the ground. So make sure that you have good positioning when you're in a team fight like that. When you see that the enemy Lucio is going to use his ultimate, that of course you can take him out. A lot of Lucios either like to wall ride and then use their ultimate, so this is like the easier ones to take out. But the really good Lucios, they usually tend to, you know, just use their ultimate when they're on ground level. Like that, of course, they can land it faster. With that said, you should be patient, you should be in a good position, and of course, you should be able to take out the enemy Lucio pretty easily for the most part when, of course, he's in the air. Also, a lot of Widowmakers struggle on close quarter combat with Lucio. The best tip I can give you guys is try to land a shot on him, and hopefully you can land some headshots by spraying him down with the SMG if you're very accurate. Listen, even the best Widowmakers struggle with Lucios at close range, okay? So don't sweat it if you're missing all your shots. It's not a big deal. Okay, so we move on forward to Mercy now. My number one fundamental on Widowmaker versus Mercy combat. You don't always have to focus the Mercy, guys, okay? Which brings me to my critical tip. Make sure that you are eliminating people that are creating space for the enemy Mercy. See, a really good Mercy is going to be very mobile. A really good Mercy is always going to be looking for people that are creating space for her. In other words, a really good Mercy is always going to be looking for people that she can Guardian Angel to back and forward, so that of course she's very hard to hit, okay? The point is, if you eliminate the people that are creating space for the enemy Mercy, then you basically tone down the mobility that the enemy Mercy is going to have, which means she's going to be easier to kill, and on top of all that, she's going to be an easy target for your team also because she's not going to have good mobility. The reason why you want to eliminate people that are creating space for Mercy as well is because like that, if your Genji has Dragon Blade, guess what? The enemy Mercy isn't going to be able to escape. Like I said earlier, guys, How many games have we had with Widowmaker where we say, oh my god, this enemy Mercy is unkillable, this enemy Mercy literally carried the entire team? The reason why that happened is because you failed to take out people that were creating space for Mercy, and you were just so focused on Mercy that you failed to look at the fact that it wasn't her, she wasn't the problem, it was the people that were creating space for her, and the fact that you couldn't take those people out. Sometimes killing the Mercy is the wrong thing to do, because of course you might miss your shot on her, and then of course she might basically just go back to cover, go to the soldier on the high ground that you should have taken out, and then of course the soldier ends up killing you. Okay, my second critical tip when it comes down to Mercy versus Widowmaker combat. For the most part, there's going to be a lot of Mercies that are going to be in the back line, and they're not really going to be doing much. If you know the enemy Mercy's position, make sure that of course you go for a grapple shot, so of course you can take out the enemy Mercy. Okay, this is something that is definitely going to help you out a lot. When it comes down to picking off the enemy Mercy very easily, because if you go for a grapple shot, the enemy Mercy is probably not going to be moving as much because she thinks she might be safe, and of course you're going to be able to land an easy shot on her. So my third critical tip, right, when it comes down to Widowmaker versus Mercy, this one is a little bit hard to do, specifically if you've been playing Fortnite for 10 straight days like me. But the point is, when Mercy activates her ultimate, guys, you want to make sure that of course you are trying to take her out, because a lot of Mercies, when they activate their ultimate at lower tiers, they basically just fly in the air constantly because they think it makes them unstoppable. Make sure that you punish this type of behavior. If you see the Mercy flying in the air constantly, make sure that you take your time and you land some great accurate shots to of course eliminate the enemy Mercy. We move on forward to Moira now. My number one critical tip on Widowmaker versus Moira combat. My friends, positioning is key. If you have really great positioning, the enemy Moira is most likely not going to be able to do anything to you. And if she is going after you, even though you have the better positioning on her, guess what? She's being a liability for her team because she's too focused on doing damage to you when you're at a safe location, and she's not focused on healing her team, which is of course what she most likely should be doing. So remember, if you have great positioning against enemy Moiras, you're going to be very effective against those enemy Moiras. Also, keep in mind, guys, right? A lot of Moiras, you know, they like to be very aggressive with DPS, specifically against your other teammates. If your positioning is on point, you should also be able to easily take out DPS Moiras. Okay, the second tip on the second fundamental of Widowmaker versus Moira combat. Moira is extremely vulnerable when she's using her ultimate. Okay, her movement speed does increase by a little bit, or at least that's what it seems like. But the point is, you want to take out the enemy Moira when she's ulting, because that's of course when she's the most vulnerable. And of course, my third critical tip when it comes down to Moira, yo, if she throws one of them damage orbs at you, boy, you better run. Alright, if you see a damage orb heading your way, you better run, okay? I cannot tell you guys how many times I have died because of a random damage orb that the Moira threw at me. Also, it should go without saying that another fundamental of Widowmaker versus Moira combat is that you should always be punishing the Moiras that are making bad plays when it comes down to positioning. We move on forward to Symmetra now. So keep in mind, Symmetra is going to be going over to the defense category pretty soon, which is why I'm not going to be going too in depth on my 3 critical fundamentals on Widowmaker versus Symmetra combat. But right now, when she's in the support category, the number 1 fundamental of Widowmaker versus Sim combat, make sure that you have great positioning, and make sure that if you see a Symmetra heading towards you, that of course you get away from her. Don't try to challenge the Symmetra at close range. She will melt you. Alright, as you guys know, I was a Sim main, okay, when I was on console, and I would always destroy Widowmakers because they would just get too cocky. Remember, at the moment, you know, when Symmetra's on the support, right, at the moment of me making this video, she is completely useless if you fight her within medium to long ranges, and that's exactly what you want to do. The second tip that you guys want to do and want to apply when it comes down to Widowmaker versus Symmetra combat, again, at the moment of me making this video, she's in the support category. She has a teleporter. She always tries to get the teleporter at the beginning of the game, which of course is the second fundamental on Widowmaker versus Sim combat. Make sure that you try to learn where Symmetras are going to be positioned to of course farm their ultimate. Like that, every single game you can take out the enemy Symmetra on the early game. This is going to give your team a huge advantage. The first advantage is going to be a 6v5. The second advantage, the enemy team is not going to have a teleporter. The third critical tip on Widowmaker versus Symmetra combat, when she throws her photon shield at you, make sure that you go for a grapple shot and you take her out with a headshot. Alright, we move on forward to Zenyatta. A lot of Zenyatas like to peek corners and then just throw their fully charged orbs. If you see that the enemy Zenyatta is doing this on a consistent basis, you want to make sure that you place yourself in a great position where if the enemy Zenyatta is going to be peeking, you're basically going to be able to easily take him out with a headshot. Punish the peeking Zenyatas. Again, there are some Zenyatas that just play very, very aggressively, so you need to be punishing those types of players. The second critical tip on Widowmaker versus Zen combat. Make sure that when Zenyatta is using Transcendence, that of course you try to go for the headshots on them squishies, because of course it's just going to be way too much damage for the Zenyatta to of course out heal. Okay, also it's going to be doing 300 damage like instantly, okay, and Zenyatta is just not going to be able to heal that. Anyways, my third critical tip on Widowmaker versus Zen combat. This isn't the best example, but again, it's an example that should give you guys a general idea. If the Zenyatta puts a Discord orb on you, you want to make sure that you wait until the Discord orb is gone or that you change positioning. And the reason for this is because sometimes Zenyatas, they like to put a Discord on you and charge up your balls, and then as you peek to the corner, they're basically going to eliminate you. So if a Zenyatta has a Discord orb on you, play it patiently. If you're in a position where you can play it safe, which most likely you are, because you know, if your positioning is great, you should most of the time be on a pretty good safe position with an escape route. Anyways, make sure that you wait until the Discord orb is gone, and then of course you either change positioning to take out the enemy Zenyatta, or of course you take out the enemy Zenyatta. And my friends, those are 3 critical tips against each of these support heroes that we have right now in Overwatch at the moment. If you want to keep up with everything Widowmaker, a ton of great guides, a ton of great content, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for supporting the guides. And of course, I will be seeing you guys on my next video. For more Widowmaker guides, click the Widowmaker guides playlist in the description or check out the guide on the top left. Peace.